Excel 2007 Pivot Reports. There's no denying that your Excel spreadsheets are going to be chock full of information. You can have up to 1,000,000 rows of data here in Excel 2007. Well, pivot tables can really help you to better analyze your information. It's a different way of laying out your various records so that really in a blink of an eye you can grasp the information that you need to out of that big large spreadsheet. So here we're going to insert a pivot table, modify it. We can even create a pivot table based off of external information, like from a database that you have out there with great pieces of information that you'd like to analyze. Not only can you create pivot tables, but you can also create pivot charts, which are a graphical representation of the data that you're trying to analyze. Pivot tables and charts have been around in Excel for years and years, but of course, here in the 2007 product, the tools are in different locations, so I'll help you navigate that difference if you are used to pivot tables already. I have a spreadsheet already built here with our Sport Shop inventory. What we have are various products. They each have, of course, a price. There's sizes for each product. We have quantities of this in stock, SKUs, colors, and a description in case we want to build some marketing material. If I scroll down, you'll see that I do have lots of different products, lots of different pieces of information. So if I were trying to glean where I have the most quantity or the count of all the different types of batting gloves I have, I'd have to create some formulas. I'd have to really think about this. Maybe I could just simply sort it. But the point I'm trying to get to is it's not really screaming at me anything in particular, except for this is a collection of data. A pivot table is going to help me better analyze my Sport Shop inventory. So the first thing we need to do is find the command. It's here on the Insert ribbon under Pivot Table. If I click this down arrow, I see I could create a pivot table or a pivot chart. I'm going to go for a pivot table. Of course, I could always just click this button here as well. It's already indicating the range of information, but as usual in these dialog boxes, when you click the button with the red arrow, you can go out and select the data. It guessed that I wanted that range based on the fact that I was on this sheet and I had a cell selected within this range. All right, and by the way, I have named this range previously. It's called Pivot Source. That's why it says Pivot Source. If I selected this entire range, it would say the name of the sheet tab, A1 through G82. Either way. Just want to show you, again, Excel indicates, hey, you named your range, let's go with that. That's the easiest way possible. Choose this red arrow saying Pivot Source. Where should I put this? In a new worksheet or just right in this worksheet somewhere else? I'd prefer it in a new worksheet. I'll choose OK. And before I do anything else, I'm going to name this sheet. I'm going to call it Pivot 1. That way, if I bounce back and forth between the sheets, I will know which sheet to click on. Of course, in the real world, you want to give it a descriptive term for why you're creating this pivot table. Now, if any of you are used to pivot tables and older versions of Excel, this may look a little bit different for you. Of course, this is where my pivot table is going to go. This is a placeholder for now, but this is really where my work is to be done. I get to select the fields that I want to display by putting check marks, and then if I want them to be row labels, column labels, what I want to do with the values, and of course if I want to filter anything. So what do I want to look at? Well, product, of course. When I put a check mark in product, I see here it's going to be a row label, and I see it here as a row label. Well, I'd also like to see the sizes. When I click on size, it shows I've got 2 row labels here, and here I see them. Batting gloves, these are all my sizes. When I click this little minus, it will contract the information, so I could just see this very succinctly. I'd also like to take a look at the colors. When I click color, it makes it even more of an outline. So I've got my caps, my sizes, and then my colors. Well, I'd prefer my colors to actually be a column label. Now I've got my row labels here, and I've got my column labels here. What values would I like to see inside there? How about the prices? When I click price, it throws it in the values just because it assumes you're talking numbers, you're done filling in the row labels and column labels area, it's time for the values. Well, let's take a look at this. My baseball caps are $40 a piece, and I have a value in there for the price. For each one of my batting gloves, they're $10 a piece. My grand totals, it added up that each one of the categories for batting gloves I have is $10, so I have the sum of my price is $40. You know, in this context, that really doesn't make sense. Are we really going to be searching for that? Maybe the sum of all the prices in our inventory so we know what our stock is worth, but even there, that's probably not the best use of our pivot table. So I'm going to remove sum of price by just removing that check mark there. Let's take a look at quantity. We're probably more likely going to want to analyze the quantity that we have in stock of each product. So we can see here we've got 305 black baseball caps. We break that down, that's 155 and 150 for our various sizes. So we have these subtotals here in bold. If I scroll over, oh, I don't have to scroll, I see my grand totals. My grand total of adult baseball caps is $698. My grand total of baseball caps total is $1,573. If I scroll down, I can see that I also have grand totals at the bottom. I have 4,972. Remember, this column is just the color black. Black products in my inventory, and so on down the line. I can, of course, rearrange this information. I can drag these items over. I don't know if that makes sense. I can show size and color up here. I've got my colors, adult, child, etc. down the line. I can move my colors over here. So however it makes sense for you to see this information. Let's talk a little bit now about modifying this more, what these little tools are. Let's start in their pivot table field list. You can tell this is really where the bulk of our work is being done. Now here we can change the layout of this field list. I'm going to move this over so you can see field section and arrows stacked. I can have them side by side. I can resize this. Although then you can't see it if I resize it, so I'll resize it back. I think you get the point though. This is just modifying the way that I'm looking at my field list. If I double click on it, it anchors it back here. We're in the pivot table tools ribbon because we have a pivot table selected. If I click outside here, I don't see that pivot table tool information anymore. If I click on this, I get it back. So my point is, we're still talking about this pivot table field list, and here's where I can go also to remove it from view and to bring it back. Remove it from view and bring it back. You might have noticed when I clicked on these items, I got this little down arrow. When I do that, I get a little dialog box here. And at the top of it, I can choose if I want to sort it. I have more sort options that I can go for. You gotta click right on it. I could also choose what I want to filter. Maybe I just want to see the black items that are in stock. All right. And this showed up with my filter. If I want to select all now, I'll choose OK, and they're all back. So these items, it opens up that same dialog box that we get here, report filter. We can also move this if we wanted this to be a row label. Instead of clicking and dragging like I did before, I could also choose to remove the field. If I click on sum of quantity, I get the same shortcut menu. I'll move this over again. The same shortcut menu, but I also have value field settings. If I'm looking at quantity and I'm summing it, maybe I want to count the quantity that I have in stock. Maybe I want to average the quantities. Maybe I want to simply show the values as the difference from or a percentage of. So I have a lot of power here in the way that I'm analyzing the data. If I click number format, I could change it to currency. Of course, that doesn't make sense for quantity, but if I still had prices there, that would make sense. I'm going to cancel this information and double click here to dock it again. The last item in this dialog box is Defer Layout Update. It's going to update when I open this spreadsheet, but I could choose that manually. I want to update it, that I don't want it to change until I go into my field list and choose Update. Because maybe I went into here and I made some modifications, but I'm not yet ready for my pivot table to update with that information. Let's go on back into the Options area. We have a pivot table here, and I could go into the options overall. This will open up a dialog box, and I can really get down into details. Do I want to change the layout and the format? Do I want to not show my grand totals? Do I want to display information differently, like I don't want these minus and plus signs? What about printing? When I print this, do I want to have the buttons? Maybe not. So that's why it's not checked. Most people wouldn't want to. What about the data? Do I want all this source information stored with the file? It makes for better efficiency when you're using this spreadsheet because all the data will be collected together and it doesn't have to do some sort of call out to another file. I think you get the point of my pivot table options. I'll choose OK. And I took away those grand totals. If I want to get them back, I of course can go back into the options, but they're also on this design ribbon here under grand totals. I have lots of choices. I could choose it on for rows and columns, or maybe just for rows or just for columns. There's also the subtotals command as well that took away my subtotals. I kind of like the subtotals. Maybe I want them at the bottom of the group though, instead of at the top of the group. Let's go back to the options part. Active field. Well, what do I have selected there? Let me choose a product and go into active field. It's showing my active field as being product. I can go into the field settings here for this. Right now, it's automatic for subtotals and filters. Maybe I would like a custom subtotal. Would I like to see the count of my products? I'll go ahead and choose OK. And now what I'm seeing is my baseball cap. I've got a count of 2 for black. Adult and child. I've just got 2 different types of baseball caps there. I can go back into active field. I want to make sure I have active field selected. Field settings. And I can go back to automatic. Choose OK. Here we have the group selection and ungroup. These are considered groupings. I can work with the outline version of this if I'd like to. Of course, I can sort and filter depending on what I have selected. In this group, I could sort by ascending order. Whoops. That's now sorting all of my sizes by ascending order instead of descending order. If I click on products, now I can sort these by ascending or descending order. Or of course I can get more detailed. If I need to refresh my data, change my data source, that would be fine. I can also clear my pivot table, any actions that I'd taken. I can also select the entire pivot table. Maybe I just want to select my labels and values. I can even move my table to a new worksheet. If this is something that I'd like to deal with in another area, that might be the best choice. I'll click Cancel there. We'll come back to our pivot table. Formulas allow you to make adjustments. You could actually create a new calculated field. If this just wasn't doing it for you and you wanted to multiply your price times your quantity, for example, you could certainly do that here. Let's move on to the design ribbon now. We've talked about these 2 items in the layout, the subtotals and grand totals. If we look at report layout, we have some choices. We're in compact form. If we choose outline form, now it's moved our sizes over into a different area. That might be an easier way to look at it. I'll